Some of these tech giants have gotten awfully big. There's a lot of talk, and it can be taxation, it can be antitrust or competition law, it can be regulation like we're talking about here. Is that potentially a real constraint on the growth of this part of the business, which has been such a big driver in the stock market?
Well, I mean, some reform is overdue, right? Because tech has, especially social media, has benefited from essentially no-touch regulation over the last 8 years, while industries that they're sort of grabbing share from have been highly regulated. So I think it makes sense that we're starting to realize, look, if 65% of young people get their primary news from Facebook, we have to treat it as a media company. But I think tech is still got a huge runway. I mean, if you look at the two best eras to ever own tech stocks, it's 1950 to 59 and 1991 to 99. Both saw tech drive more than 40% of the total return of the S&P. But they were both times when the labor market was constrained. So I think if we're looking at today, and we're not late cycle, but the labor market's constrained, I think tech is your only solution to generate growth. And so it's, I'd still be buying tech stocks here.
One risk here, even if Congress takes no action, is that big tech companies will have to increase their compliance staffs by many times over. And we know that banks have talked about what a drag that is, the tens of thousands of compliance officers that are highly paid individuals. How much of a drag could that be at for tech earnings if that becomes the reality for tech companies?
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen, because in the last 8 years, 3 industries bore the brunt of the regulation. So in the last 8 years, more regulations were signed, major regulations signed ever in the history of any administration. But it fell on energy, financials, and the manufacturing sector. And as you know, all 3 essentially were kind of dogs over the last 8 years. So I would say that it would be a negative development, but I doubt it's going to be that extreme. I think the notion of self-regulation makes a lot of sense, and I think we just have to introduce the concept of moral standards equivalent of what's acceptable. So I think that because letting users determine what that is I think the issue.